Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah. So welcome to our Ramadan prep workshop where we're going to be covering, inshallah, the rules about the month of Ramadan, what you need to know about fasting, and what you need to know about zakah. So this is going to be the exterior dimension of the talk in terms of the things that we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be doing them at some level of detail. And of course, it's always important to remember that in Islam, whatever we do, we need to make sure the outward is correct and we need to make sure the inward is correct. This is not about, should I focus only on one or the other? When you pray, you have to be standing correctly. You have to pray the number of units correctly. But you also need to remember that you're standing in front of Allah, and you need to remember that you're praying to Allah and you try to have full sincerity and concentration when you're praying. So it's very important to make sure you focus on the inward and the outward simultaneously. Let's just get started, inshallah. So with Ramadan, let's begin. So we're going to start to talk about the outward for now, in terms of what you need to know. A lot of Muslims, they know 50% of these things. Some Muslims know 90% of these things. And the 10% that's missing, what's going to happen is they're not going to learn it. Do you know why they're not going to learn it? Because when somebody knows 90% of something, they'll look at a presentation and they go, I already know this stuff. And then they'll leave. And somewhere in slide number 8, there was the 10% of stuff that they didn't know. And because they don't have the patience to wait through a class, they will always remain at 90% or 70% or 50%. So alhamdulillah, because you all showed up, assuming that you're going to stay for a little bit, inshallah, you've already gotten over that initial difficulty or challenge that a lot of people have. So alhamdulillah, so let's get started with that. Ramadan and fasting. So the Quran was revealed in the month of Ramadan. And this is among the verses that were just recited to us in the beginning. All the verses that talk about Ramadan and fasting, they're in Surah Al-Baqarah. And it's only about a page and a half in the entire Quran, which the Quran has. How many pages are in the Quran approximately? Does anybody know? How many? 600 pages, that's right. So out of 600 pages, there's like a page and a half about the rules of fasting and all that. And all the other details come in the hadith, in the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And what is a hadith? Who can define a hadith for me? There's three definitions or three definitions of a hadith. Anyone tell me what's one? What the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said. That's good. That's one definition. An action, something he did. And what's the third one? The one that most people forget. Yeah. Not first, you're close. Descriptions about his, exactly, yeah. His characteristics or description about him. That's what a hadith is. It's a saying, an action, or a description of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So you find these details in the Quran as well as in the hadith, in the sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And the Quran was revealed in the month of Ramadan. And so the most important thing about the month of Ramadan is not fasting. It's that the Quran was revealed in that month. And therefore, you are observing extra prayers, extra fasting, extra recitation of everything, extra that you do, extra charity in the month of Ramadan, because you're commemorating the revelation of the Quran into the world. This is something that's worth commemorating. So this is the first part, understanding the purpose behind Ramadan. And then fasting is an integral part or an important part of the month of Ramadan as well. So fasting is actually an act of worship. It is something that you're doing for Allah. You're not doing it for anybody else. And it is in the same category as prayer. The same way you pray 5 times a day, you have to fast every single day in the month of Ramadan unless you have a valid excuse. So it is very important to understand that prayer and fasting and zakah, they're all on the same level. They're all pillars of Islam. So it's very important to understand that. And then the purpose behind fasting. Fasting is an exercise in self-control. Exercise doesn't mean you're working out or something. Meaning it is an action that helps you build self-control. What does self-control mean? Self-control means that when you feel like doing something that you shouldn't be doing, you're able to stop yourself. Everyone has a problem with this. You put some cheesecake in front of somebody who just ate a lot and they really like cheesecake. That just happens to be me, right? And then it's very difficult to resist, right? That temptation, because the temptation, you want it and you say, you know what, but I'm already full, I already ate a lot, I shouldn't probably be eating this. Or I can eat a few bites and then I'll be okay. But it's tempting. And if you say, I shouldn't do that, it's probably not good for me. But then something else comes that's even worse than that. Somebody comes and you're at a gathering and people order pepperoni pizza and you're hungry. And you're like, but this is not halal pepperoni. And this is not Impossible pepperoni. What's the other brand? Beyond Meat pepperoni. You say, I cannot eat this. There's pork in there. And there's a temptation to say, you know what? Let's just do it anyways. Or I'm so hungry. Or I wonder what it tastes like. If your goal as a Muslim is to resist that temptation that's there. So what fasting does is fasting teaches you to build up self-control so that you're able to resist the temptations that come your way in life. So you're actually avoiding things which are halal for you in the month of Ramadan when you're fasting. By avoiding the halal, you build up a level of self-control so that you can actually avoid the haram as well. So normally you can drink water. Water is halal. I know some water bottles, they're marked halal. Even if they're not marked halal, they're still halal. Water is halal. It doesn't need to be marked halal. I don't know why. Like some places like Thailand and Singapore and I think Malaysia, I've seen water bottles. It's like marked halal. I'm not sure why. Why would the water not be halal? I don't know what's in the water. But water is halal. But when you're fasting, it becomes haram for you. You can't even drink the water. If you stop yourself from drinking that water and it gets hot and you're thirsty and you haven't had anything to drink, then you are building self-control. And then later on in life, if you're tempted and somebody offers you some beer, some wine, it's a special type of wine, your business partner comes and invites you to drink something, says it's very expensive, $200 wine, I would like you to taste it. And you say, well, we don't drink as Muslims. Say, just take a sip so you know what it tastes like. There's a temptation there. If you remember that I could give up water when it was hot and I was thirsty and I wanted something to drink, if I could stop that, I can stop myself from doing something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited me from doing. Right? So the reason behind fasting is so that you build up a level of discipline and self-control that you can do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do and you can avoid the things that Allah wants you to avoid. So that's the wisdom behind why we fast. Now, what do we fast from? We're not allowed to eat food. We're not allowed to drink. We're not allowed to have intercourse during the month of Ramadan in the daytime from dawn until sunset. And this is what fasting is going to be. So fasting is basically you stop yourself from doing three things. These three things are the basis of fasting. And we're going to talk a little bit about the days and when you start and all of that. Okay? But first of all, who needs to fast in Ramadan? So normally every single Muslim must fast in the month of Ramadan, unless you fall into one of these exceptional categories. Number one, who needs to fast? People who are mature. Mature means adults. What are adults according to Islam? Adults are not 18 years old and they're not 21 years old. A person becomes an adult in Islam when they reach the age of puberty. And how do you determine whether somebody has reached the age of puberty? For a boy or a girl, there's a few things. Number one, they have their first wet dream. Actually, that's all it is. And for a girl, she has her first menstrual period. If none of these happen by the age of 15, they're already considered to be an adult. So anyone who's 15 years old, Islamically is an adult. Even though you can't drive a car, and even though you can't buy cigarettes, not that you would want to, right? You are Islamically considered an adult in the sight of Allah. And if you get either your menstrual period before that, or you have your first wet dream before that, you are considered an Islamic adult, which means you're allowed to lead prayer. It means that you must be praying every single day. You have to be waking up for Fajr. It means you need to be fasting every single day in the month of Ramadan. It means you need to be, paying your zakah. If you have money, you are an adult in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means that if you're not an adult yet, and you're like 9 years old, or you're 10 years old, or something like that, you don't technically have to fast in the month of Ramadan. But the question is, should you? Should children fast? Right? And this depends on the child. If their body is healthy, they're generally not going to be harmed physically, nothing bad is going to happen to them, they should start trying to at least fast as many fasts as they possibly can. So try to do half of Ramadan, or try to do quarter of the month of Ramadan. Or if it becomes so difficult because the days are long and you're involved in a lot of activity or something, try to fast 3/4 of a day, or try to fast at least half of a day, or try to at least do a water fast and don't eat any food and just drink a little bit of water. Try to do something where you start to get yourself ready and prepared for the month of Ramadan. So children who don't have to fast should start getting into the habit and practice of fasting before they reach the age of maturity. So it doesn't go from 0 to 100%. They're preparing themselves slowly getting there. Number 2, you have to be sane, which means that anybody who has a mental incapacity, their special needs, and they're not responsible for their deeds in the sight of Allah, they're not required to fast. But they fall into the same category as like children, because maybe their mind is not fully developed. This is a test from Allah for them. So if their mind is not fully developed and they like children, then they fall in the same category. They can try to fast, but they're not absolutely required to, so you don't need to pressure them to do so. Number 3, free from illness. So again, the slide title is, who must fast in Ramadan? Anybody who's not sick. Which means if you're sick, then you don't need to fast in the month of Ramadan. But here's the key. You need to make it up. So if you get sick in Ramadan, if you get the flu, if you cannot get out of bed, whatever it may be, you don't have to fast that day. But as soon as you feel better, you need to continue and resume fasting again. Now here's the thing. When do you decide whether you're too sick to fast or you're not too sick? Yeah. So here's what happens. There's 2 types of people. What you're supposed to be is Islam. I'll always remember this principle. Islam is always the middle between the 2 extremes. There's an extreme here and there's an extreme here, and Islam is usually always going to be in the middle. So this is where we want to be. So there's one type of person who's very extreme. They say, I need to fast no matter what. So they're coughing, they have a sore throat, their nose is dripping, they have such a horrible headache, and they can barely get out of bed, but they're going to crawl, and they're going to get some water for suhoor, and they're going to say, I'm fasting no matter what. And they're going to lie down in bed, and they're just going to be sitting there miserable the whole day of fasting. They can barely move, but they're going to fast the entire day, and they say, I have to be fasting. You don't want to be. This is one extreme. If Allah has given you the permission to not fast when you're sick, if you're that sick and you're basically crawling around your house, you probably shouldn't be fasting. So that's not good for you to weaken your body, because you know what it does? You know why Allah wants it? Not only He wants to make it a little bit easier for you. What's going to happen is if you do that, you know what's going to happen? You're not going to recover as quickly. So if you had just not fasted that day, hydrated yourself, taken some medicine, taken some, good healthy food, whatever it is, maybe you would have recovered in like 3 days. But now because you're going to fast those 3 days when you're really, really sick, you might recover in 7 days. So we're going to take questions at the end, inshallah. So this is something you don't want to do. This is one extreme. Don't be that person in that extreme. Then we got this other extreme on the other side over here. We got this person who drinks a lot of coffee every single day. And now it's Ramadan. They say, I'm getting a little bit of a headache. I didn't drink my coffee. And by 9 a.m., I cannot do this. I need my coffee. I must be in the category of illness. This is like a pain for me. So they're going to break their fast and say, fasting is too difficult for me. I'm just going to try and make it up maybe when the days are shorter or something like that. This is an extreme. When you're fasting, you're supposed to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to repeat this again. When you're fasting, you're supposed to feel uncomfortable. If your stomach is making some sounds because you've not eaten, you don't say, oh, it's making sound, I'm sick. Look, I'm allowed to break my fast. No, you cannot break your fast. That is not being sick like on the bed. If you're at work and you're working and you say, oh, I'm getting a little distracted, maybe if I just have some water, I'll be able to focus on my project more. That is not a good reason. That doesn't mean you're sick. So this is another extreme. What you want to do is you want to be in the middle. When you're deciding for yourself if you're too sick to fast or not, don't be in one of these extremes. Be in the middle. And who's going to decide? No one can decide for you. You can't go to a doctor. You can't go to your doctor and say, am I too sick to fast? The doctor is not going to give you an answer like that. If you come to me, if you come to a sheikh, say, am I too sick to fast? You know, I can't feel, the doctor can't feel what your headache is like. Can't see what you're doing, right? So you really have to make the decision on your own, whether you're here, but you're supposed to be here, inshallah. Next category, free from chronic inability. Chronic means something that, well, it also means marijuana, but we're not talking about that. Chronic means persistent, something that lasts for a very long time, meaning chronic illness or inability. Somebody who has diabetes, somebody who's very advanced in age, become very, very old, and their body is not able to handle fasting anymore, they're in a position, see, the first illness, free from illness, means temporary illness, right? This one over here. Does this thing work? Yes. This is temporary illness. Chronic illness means long-term illness or long-term inability. Allah has tested you with some illness, some disease, old age, you're just not able to do it anymore, your body doesn't function like that. You don't have to fast. But the difference is, you're not going to recover. You're in a situation, you have an illness, you have a disease, you have something condition in your body where you're not going to be able to fast anymore. So you're in a different category now. You will not be able to make up your fast later on. Why? Because this situation is not going away. It's not expected to go away. Allah can cure you at any time, but it's not expected to go away. So if you get the flu, it's expected that's going to go away. If you have a chronic condition, right, like some type of diabetes or something like that, it's not expected to go away. So therefore, you're not even planning to make up the fast that you missed. Here, when you're sick, you have to make up those fasts after Ramadan is done. The fourth category, you will not be making them up. So what are you going to do? You're going to feed one poor person for every single day of fasting that you missed. And that's how you make up for the fast, basically. Because you're not going to be able to do the extra fast. So what you do is you calculate in advance. You could do this in advance of the month. If you know that you're in that situation, say, I cannot fast this Ramadan because I have a disease, I have an illness, and it prevents me from fasting. So you go and you're going to feed a poor person for every single day that you're going to miss. You calculate Ramadan is going to be 29 days or 30 days. If you know what it's going to be, then you pay money to somebody who can either give it to the poor and give them meals, or if you find some people that you know, you buy them meals and you give them the food for themselves. So what can you do on a practical level? If you don't know any people who you can find, you can always go to the masjid here and you can give them, take the money and say, how much does it cost to feed a poor person today in California? So we set the approximate amount at $15 per day, per person. So what you're going to do is calculate the number of days that you're not going to be able to do the whole month. Let's say 30, multiply by 15, put that amount of money in an envelope, and you're going to write on there that this is the money to feed the poor people because I was not able to fast. And there's a term for this. Anyone know the Arabic word for this? Huh? Not kafara? Fidya. So this word is fidya. F-I-D-Y-A-H. Fidya. So you're going to be paying, so you're going to write on your envelope, you can write fidya, or you can write the long English explanation of what that is. Please use this money to feed poor people because I was not able to fast. Thank you very much. And the masjid will process it and they'll find some people who are in need and they will buy the meals for them, inshallah. So this is what is going to be done in this case. Not traveling. So who must fast in Ramadan? Somebody who's not traveling. So if you are traveling, you are allowed to not fast. If you're taking a flight somewhere else or you're going somewhere very far, you don't have to fast. The question is, should you fast? So the answer is, if it's going to be easy for you to fast and it's not that difficult, you should fast. It's like very little tiny illness. If you have like a little headache, it's still better for you to fast. But if it's going to be difficult for you, it's better for you not to fast. If you're somewhere in the middle and you're like, it's kind of tough, but it's not that tough, you have the choice. All right, you get to choose. My general principle is this: if I'm going to be flying from California, if I take off from California, if I'm flying east, I will definitely fast. Why? Because you're going forward in time. Because you're going in an airplane, it's going to be faster, and you're going through time zones. So when you land, normally if I stayed in California, my fasting would have been like 15 hours. And if I'm flying, let's say to New York, or I'm flying to London, what's going to happen? My fast is probably going to be shortened to like 11 hours because I'm going faster. But if you're flying the other way around, right, it's going to become longer because you're going back in time. In terms of you're going back through time zones, your fasting is going to be longer. Then you need to make that decision what you want to do, right? And you're going to break your fast when you're in the airplane, by the way. As soon as you see sunset, you break your fast. Okay? We'll get into details, inshallah, but the short answer is you're always going to start your fasting on your current location. You're going to end your fasting in your current location, wherever you are. So if you're in an airplane and the sun sets, the sun has set in your location. You take out the date and you're going to break your fast in the airplane. Okay? So not traveling. So if you're traveling, you don't have to fast, but you should if it's going to be easy for you. Okay? And the next category is that who must fast in Ramadan? Somebody who's not in their menstrual period or in a state of lokia, which is postpartum bleeding. So basically menstruation, women know, menstrual period. Lokia, for those of you who've never had children, is that when a woman has children, she has a type of bleeding that occurs for a number of days after delivering a baby, right? So that lasts for a period of time. So when she's in any one of these two periods, she's not going to fast. And not only is she not required to fast, she's not supposed to fast. So you say, but it's easy, I can handle it. It's like traveling. It's not like travel. It's in a different category. Traveling is if you want your excuse from fasting. Illness is if you're really, really sick, it's better that you don't fast. Menstruation and lokia, you should not fast, right? Even if you feel like it. Because this is a rahmat, a mercy from Allah to make your life easier for you, and Allah has a wisdom behind telling us what we do. But the women who skip fasting in Ramadan because of menstruation, they must make it up after Ramadan. Any fast that you miss while you're traveling, you must make it up after Ramadan. Any fast that you miss when you're sick, you must make it up after Ramadan. What about chronic inability? Do you have to make up those ones after Ramadan? Because you can't, you're inability. What about when you're a child? Do you have to make up those once you become mature? No, okay? So 3 of these, you do need to make them up. Some people have this notion. I get this question every year from a lot of people. They say, you know what, if I was fasting or if I didn't make up my fast because of menstruation or because of traveling or because of illness, can I pay fidya? And the answer is no. Fidya is only for this category here because, and it makes sense why, because they're not able to make up their fasts. That's only for that category, okay? There's no other way to simply pay and say, I don't need to make it up because I'm paying. If you're paying, you need to have some type of illness or old age where you're not able to fast. Next is determining the month of Ramadan. So when does the month of Ramadan actually start? Now this is very important. In the past, it was much more difficult. Today, what most people will do is they'll just pull out their phone and they'll look at their calendar and they say, oh, what does my calendar say, right? So you're gonna check your calendar. So it seems easy, but it's actually not as easy as you think. Because if you open up let's say you have an iPhone and you go to your calendar app and you enabled the Islamic calendar in there. You go and you look at the Islamic calendar and it'll give you certain dates in there. It may or may not correspond with the correct date. Now, if you go and you open up another app, let's say your Adhan app or something like that, you open up, I use Pray Watch. So you open up Pray Watch and you look at the date, it may or may not be the correct date. So what happens is that how do you determine the month of Ramadan technically? How did the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to figure out when the month of Ramadan starts? Because the month in the Islamic calendar is based on the lunar phase. It's a lunar year, right? The Islamic months are lunar years. So in our calendar, the Gregorian calendar that we use in America, how many days are there in a year? 365. How many days are there in the Islamic calendar? 354. There's a technically 11.25 day difference. So Ramadan is going to keep going back about 11 days every single year. So if it's starting in March this year, in 3 years, it's going to be in February. In 3 more years, it's going to be in January. In 3 more years, it's going to be in December. It's going to keep on changing around to different months because the two calendars are not exactly aligned. How many months are there, how many days are there in American months? 30 or 31, with the exception of February, and leap year is 29 days for February. How many days are there in the Islamic lunar calendar in every month? It's either 29 or 30. There's never 31. There's never 28. It's always 29 or 30 days. And how do you determine how many days each month has? You actually go and you look and you see the crescent moon. And when you see the new crescent moon, the new moon, and you actually see the crescent itself, that starts the first day of the month. So the way in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to determine the first day of Ramadan is they used to go outside and they would have everyone go scatter around and say, everyone go look in the sky. On the 29th of the month of Sha'ban, which is this month right now, 1 month before Ramadan, you go out on the 29th and see if you can see the new crescent moon. If you see it, it's Ramadan the first. If you don't see it, then Sha'ban is going to have 30 days. 1 more day, we don't fast. The following day will automatically be the first of Ramadan. That's how they used to figure out when the month of Ramadan actually begins. Now, what do we do now? So what we do now is we have people all over the globe. We have telecommunication. We can go and send messages to people. So somebody who's 10,000 miles away, what if they see the crescent moon and they can call somebody else and say, by the way, I saw it. And he said, but I don't see it. Say, I know, but I saw it. So if you saw it and I didn't see it, can I trust your report? Yeah, I can trust your report. So to make a long story short, because we have the ability to communicate with other people, we can safely say that if anybody in the world, if any Muslim in the world or any trustworthy person in the world sees the crescent moon, they can go and call other people. Like if somebody in Nevada or somebody in Texas sees the crescent moon, they can call the people in California and tell them, hey, in Texas over here, we saw the moon. And California said, we didn't see the moon. But you know what? Since they saw it, we're going to go ahead and say that your seeing the moon was good enough. We're all going to start Ramadan at the same time. So this is a good principle, and there's nothing wrong with this principle. What will happen, though, sometimes is in different countries, people will celebrate Ramadan on different days because, for a few reasons. Reason number one, if somebody in California sees the crescent moon, but people who are in, let's say, Mecca, in Arabia, they say, we didn't see the moon. What happens is the time zone in California is very different. So when the people in California see it, it's already the next day in Mecca. It's daytime already. How can they start fasting in the middle of the day? They already missed it. So the people in California will be fasting. The people in Mecca will not be fasting. So sometimes you will get 1 or even 2 days off. So you say, this country started Ramadan on this day, and this other country started Ramadan on a different day. And there's many reasons why this happens, but this is normal. And it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Some people get so excited and upset and mad, and they're like, why is this happening? And what's wrong with the Muslims? Nothing wrong with the Muslims per se. You know, we could maybe improve the system, but this is not a huge deal. So it's important to determine what the month is. What should you do? The short answer is, you pick your local, your nearest, and your most trusted masjid or scholar, and you follow whatever they're deciding to, whichever method they're deciding to figure out whether Ramadan is starting, you follow that. So for ICOI, Islamic Center of Irvine, we use one of the methods was called pre-calculation. Pre-calculation basically says that we've determined, based on an 8-degree, 5-degree criteria, there is an angle of separation from the sun, and there's an angle of the moon being above the horizon, will determine that we're almost sure that someone is going to be able to sight the moon somewhere on Earth, and therefore we're going to determine the month of Ramadan is starting. So this year, Ramadan is going to start on March 11th, and Eid is going to be on, does anyone know? April 10th. Yes, April 10th. All right, so these are the dates we've planned in advance because we know someone is going to be able to sight the moon. If for some strange reason, somehow the calculation was mistaken and it turns out that there was no way anyone could have sighted the moon and nobody sees the moon anywhere in the entire world and we have people all over looking for it, then something is wrong. We have to make an adjustment, okay? So that's the way that we go about it here. If you're going to another masjid or you follow another group of scholars or something like that and they say, we don't accept this method, we want somebody in California to see the moon, that's fine. Follow that principle. Even if you start Ramadan a day late, it's not the end of the world. Okay? All right, next. So I mentioned this. Look for the new moon crescent on the 29th of Sha'ban. And then for Eid, you look again on the 29th of Ramadan for the crescent. They used to look for it. And if they saw it, they would determine that Ramadan is 29 days. If they don't see it, Ramadan is 30 days. And the next day is going to be Eid. What happens if Ramadan is 31 days? What happens? Something is wrong because you cannot have a month with 31 days. So you made a mistake. You forgot the calendar. Very good. So we need a system. System is not the birth of the, I won't get into that detail, inshallah. Next, requirements for fasting. So what do you need to do when you're fasting? Number one, you need to have the intention. What does the intention for fasting mean? Intention means that in your heart or in your mind, you understand that you're not going to eat or drink in the daytime, not because you're trying to lose weight, not because for health reasons. You're doing it because it's Ramadan and you're supposed to be fasting. As long as you have that general idea in your mind, that is the intention. You don't need to say in your mind, I am fasting for Allah because it's Ramadan. You don't need to be having words going through your mind. The intention is in your mind that I'm fasting. That's it, sufficient. You're allowed to make the intention at the beginning of Ramadan and say, oh Allah, I'm going to make the intention to fast the entire Ramadan, just in your mind generally, and that suffices. You don't need to wake up every morning and when you're eating, say Bismillah. Okay, why am I eating? Why am I going to stop eating? Because I'm fasting for Ramadan. You don't need to do that every time. So the intention, almost everybody has the intention. When they're fasting, they almost always have the intention. Very rarely, if somebody somehow, I'll give you an example of the only time where you don't have the intention. So somebody wakes up and they completely forgot it's Ramadan. And they say, you know what? I think I'm just not going to eat today because I need to lose some weight. And then you start and you don't eat, and then all of a sudden, 2 p.m., you're like, you know what? Wait a minute. I'm supposed to be fasting. I totally forgot. I didn't eat or drink anything for the weight reason, but I just realized that I'm fasting. I didn't have the right intention. That's a problem. How likely is that to happen? Very, very rare. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because if you go to any fatwa website that people ask sheikhs questions, there's so many questions about intention. People start to panic and they have like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, about what if my intention like this? What if I didn't make the intention like this? What if the intention like this? I can tell you safely, 99.9% of the time, people have the intention. It's really hard to have the wrong intention when you're fasting. So don't panic so much about it. Understand that yes, intention is a requirement, but it's really hard. It's like, give you an example. You're supposed to have the intention when you're making wudu, that you're making wudu to pray. Now, how can you not have the intention when making wudu? It's really rare. If somebody is like, it's so hot outside, I need to just wash my face, and the person washes their face. Man, my arms are hot too. Wash your arms. Man, my hair is hot too, man. My feet are hot too. Let me just cool my feet down too. And then they walk away, and then it's time for prayer, and they're like, oh man, I think I washed all the limbs that I'm supposed to wash for wudu. It's good. I can go ahead and perform wudu. I can go ahead and pray. But I didn't have the intention for wudu. How rare is that scenario? Extremely rare, right? When you're making wudu, you know why you're making wudu. So 99.9% of people who make wudu, they have the intention. It's very difficult to not have the intention when making wudu. Fasting is in the same category, okay? The only other case where maybe it's more common is that if a woman has her period, right? And what's going to happen is she has her period for 5 days and she doesn't know when it's going to end. And every morning she wakes up, she's supposed to be basically get up and check. And if her period is over in the beginning, she's going to start fasting in the beginning of the day at dawn time. What's going to happen is if she doesn't know that her period has begun and she decides, you know what, well, I think I'm on my period, I'm just going to sleep in. I don't need to pray. Don't need to pray Fajr. I don't need to fast. So she just sleeps in and she's going to enjoy, wakes up at like 2 p.m. And then she realizes, oh no, my period was over and I was just sleeping and I was resting and I haven't eaten anything, but I didn't make the intention either. Did I have the intention to fast this day? No, because last night I had intention to not fast because I assumed I was on my period. This is the case where you need to be a little bit aware of your intention. It's also somewhat rare. Not as rare as the wudu, but it's somewhat rare. That's the only time you need the intention. Otherwise, don't get panicked. Don't start to panic about, did I have the intention? Was I thinking about Allah when I was eating my suhoor and I was thinking about... People, when they hear intention is a requirement for fasting, they start flipping out and panicking. I want people to calm down when it comes to panic, okay? And understand intention usually is fulfilled. The second thing that's a requirement for fasting is you cannot eat and you cannot drink. That means anything. You cannot take one sip. You should not be having even one drop of water purposely being swallowed in order for you... I'm not fasting, by the way. So in order for you to make sure your fast is valid. You cannot eat or drink anything. That's pretty obvious. Intercourse, also not allowed. Any type of intercourse is not going to be allowed. And the last thing is no vomiting intentionally. So most people, if they vomit, do they do it intentionally or unintentionally? Unintentionally, right? What do you think the percentage of people who intentionally vomit compared to the percentage of people who unintentionally vomit is? I would put it at what? Yeah, let's just be super generous. It's like at least 95%, maybe 99%, right? Of people who, when you vomit, it's unintentional. So you don't need to worry about it so much unless you're one of those people who's getting food stuck in, or you have, anorexia, is it bulimia, and you shouldn't be, that's a problem in and of itself. You should get some help with that, right? So otherwise, this is something you don't need to worry about so much because vomiting unintentionally does not break your fast, okay? So these are the 4 things that could potentially break your fast. These are the things you need to make sure you're doing in order for your fast to be valid. What does not break your fast? Now this is where people start panicking all over the place. Like, does this break your fast? 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 If it's not in one of these 4 things, and the first and the last one are very rare anyway, so we're talking about only 3 things pretty much: eating, drinking, intercourse. If it's not one of those 3 things, it probably doesn't break your fast. The only difference is it better to not do it, or is it okay to do it? That's really where all the questions arise. But it doesn't break your fast. So let me tell you what does not break your fast. If you forgetfully eat or drink, it actually doesn't break your fast. So if you're in the middle of the day and you go to work and all of a sudden your company, it's Friday and they bring donuts for all the employees on Friday. You're like, yes, donut day, and you forgot that you're fasting. And you start eating the donut and you're like, this is great. And then somebody goes, hey, aren't you a Muslim? Aren't you supposed to be fasting in Ramadan or something like that? You're like, oh no, subhanAllah, I forgot. And you have half of a donut has already been eaten. So what do? Do you eat the rest? No. If you take one more bite, your fast is broken because you were not forgetting anymore. You remember. What about that food you're still chewing? Can you swallow the last bite? No, you spit it out. Do you need to go back and intentionally vomit the rest of the food that came out? No, because that'll break your fast anyways. So no, that's not healthy for you anyway. So no. So whatever you forgetfully ate or drank, it's excused. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the way he said it was, if this happens to you, Allah gave you that to eat. I mean, that's just a gift from Allah. Don't need to be so upset or mad about it if you really forgot. Now, what you don't want to do, I've seen some kids try and do this, right? They're fasting and they're really hungry. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to make myself forget that I'm fasting so I can go and eat this thing. That obviously is not going to work. You have to genuinely have forgotten that you're fasting, and then it's not going to break your fast, okay? Number two, if you mistakenly, accidentally eat or drink at the wrong time. So for example, you wake up and you're supposed to start your fasting at 4:23 a.m. and you're eating and eating and you're looking at your clock and you're like, everything's good, and you're eating and eating, and then you look at another clock and you're like, that says it's 4:27. This says I still have 5 minutes, and this one says that I'm already 5 minutes late. And you didn't realize that your clocks are wrong. In this case, it falls in the same category as forgetfully eating or drinking. You stop immediately, your fast is still going to be valid. Now, most scholars have taken the opinion that this will actually break your fast, not the first one, but the second one. But Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah and many other scholars have taken the opinion that it falls in the same category. That's the opinion that I lean towards. It's a scholarly commentary, running through it very quickly. So this also does not break your fast. Let's say there's 3 minutes left for breaking your fast, and then all of a sudden you hear the adhan, and you're like, yes, Maghrib time, and you take the date and you eat the date. And then someone says, oh, adhan? Oh, I was just playing that on my phone. I just pushed play and I was playing the adhan. That's not the real adhan. It's actually 3 more minutes left before the sunset. You're in category number 2. You mistakenly ate 3 minutes away. Ignore that. It doesn't break your fast. Your fast is still valid. You don't need to make it up. Number 3, if you taste food without swallowing it, it doesn't break your fast. Now, why would you want to taste food? You don't be like, I'm so hungry. I know I can't eat this cookie, but let me just keep tasting it. No, not that category. Let's say you're cooking and you're like, I need this sauce that I don't know if I put too much salt or whatever it is, and it's going to ruin the entire thing. Okay, I'm going to taste it with my tongue, and then I'm not going to swallow it. I'm going to spit it out immediately. I'm going to wipe it off my tongue, and I just tasted it because there was a reason for that. It's not going to break your fast. You didn't swallow it, and you had a good, valid reason for tasting whatever that food was. Okay, so that's not going to break your fast. Chewing food without swallowing it. Now, why would you do this? Right? Again, you have to have a good reason. The main reason is if you have kids. If you have little babies and they cannot eat solid food, you might have to chew the food for them and then give it to them so that they can eat that food. So chewing food and you don't swallow it is not going to break your fast as long as you had a good reason for chewing it. Okay, then it's fine. Eye drops will not break your fast. Ear drops do not break your fast. Nose drops do not break your fast. An enema, which is a rear drop, that does not break your fast. All right? As long as these things are non-nutritive, so they don't have, I'm getting there, as long as they don't have anything that's hydrating your body, right? Which generally they don't. Medicinal injections, patches, inhalers. So any type of injection, you have a vaccine or something like that, it's not going to break your fast. If you have a glucose drip injecting and hydrating your body with the glucose and water, that's going to break your fast because it's nutritive and it's going in there for the purpose of hydrating you. But if it's just a normal, injection for some other reason, it's not going to break your fast. Patches, nicotine patches, for example, or anything else like that, not going to break your fast. Inhalers, scholars differ on this issue of asthma inhalers, whether they break your fast or not. I slightly now lean towards the opinion that they do not break your fast, but some scholars say that they do. Insulin, I forgot my answer to that. I'm going to look it up again. Every year I keep forgetting. I'll look it up for you, inshallah. Brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth does not break your fast unless you swallow toothpaste or you swallow some of the water, right? But otherwise, you're allowed to brush your teeth. Even with toothpaste, But if you don't need the toothpaste, then you can avoid the toothpaste. But it's not going to break your fast as long as you're not swallowing anything. So the problem with toothpaste, there's a difference between brushing your teeth with water or using miswak and using toothpaste. One of them is if you brush your teeth with the miswak or just the toothbrush, there's the fear that you might have a few drops of water go down your throat. And if that fear was a legitimate fear, meaning that you should avoid doing this, then the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would have told us that when we make wudu, you should skip rinsing your mouth. But he didn't do that. Whenever we make wudu in fasting, we still rinse our mouth. When you rinse your mouth, some water stays in your mouth. And in fact, some of the water gets absorbed in your mouth through your tongue, underneath it goes into your body. But you're not swallowing it. If you swallow that water, that's a problem. But if you spit it out when you normally rinse your mouth, that is not going to break your fast. And therefore, by analogy, brushing your teeth with water is not a problem. What about toothpaste, right? Which most people use when they brush their teeth. They say, well, the toothpaste has a taste to it. So it's like tasting something. It's like almost like tasting food, but you have to have a good reason for tasting food. You don't taste food just because you're hungry, right? You're hungry, so let me just taste the cookie so I feel better. But you have a good reason for tasting your sauce that you're making, your pasta sauce or whatever it is. Is it too salty? Is it too spicy? That's a valid reason as long as you don't swallow it. Is using toothpaste to make your breath smell good and remove the stuff on your teeth, is that a good enough reason, like tasting the pasta sauce, to use toothpaste as long as you're not swallowing it? I think so. So scholars differ on this. Some of them say it's better to avoid it. My personal view is it falls in a similar category as that you have a good reason for tasting. But what you should do is try to at least avoid brushing the back of your mouth so that paste, can be swallowed very easily. Make sure you spit all of it out, and it's not going to break your fast. It's going to be okay. Giving blood. So giving blood out, blood is coming out of your body, that does not break your fast. But if it's going to make you so weak that you become like sick and you're just lying in your bed all day, then it's disliked. It's better for you to avoid giving blood. Smelling perfume. So if somebody puts on some perfume and you smell it, that doesn't break your fast because nothing is going in. What the Muslim scholars have said, that if there's smoke, any type of smoke, whether it's cigarette smoke or very incense, like bakhur smoke, and you inhale it, because you can see the body of that smoke, and because you're smelling it and it's going inside, even though it's not nutritious, it's not hydrating you, but because it's something that you're technically consuming, that could break your fast. So you want to avoid inhaling anything which is like smoke, like bakhur, or where you can see the smoke from it. But smelling perfume, and that means smoking will break your fast, according to most scholars. And I think you should quit smoking anyways in Ramadan. Even outside of Ramadan, right? But you should use Ramadan to make it a great time to quit smoking, because it's horrible for you. It smells bad and it's bad for your health. Smelling a perfume, though, can you see, if you open a bottle of itar or perfume, do you see the smoke coming out? You do? You got some crazy perfume, man. I need to see some of that stuff, man. So if you open it, you don't see anything coming out. So you smell. That's because it has no visible body, meaning you can't see anything visible there. You can smell it all you want. It's not going to break your fast. And rinsing your mouth with water, I mentioned already. Taking a bath, nothing wrong with taking a bath, cooling yourself down. Your body will absorb some of that water. That doesn't mean that it breaks your fast. Swimming, try not to swallow any water, but you're allowed to swim. And if you accidentally, mistakenly swallow water, it's in the mistaken category. If you forgetfully swallow water, I don't know why you'd swallow water purposely when you're swimming anyways. But anyways, it's in one of these two categories. It doesn't break your fast, so you're allowed to swim. What are the things that are recommended for fasting? And I'll take questions at the end, inshallah. So just write them down so you don't forget. What's recommended? When you're fasting, remember, fasting begins at dawn. D-A-W-N. And what is dawn? Dawn is when you look outside. If you saw no buildings, and no mountains in front of you, and you were able to just see as far as you possibly can, and it was flat land, and it was nighttime. The first moment you start to see a little thread of light coming in the horizon, meaning as far as you can see, that is the definition of dawn in Islamic terminology. Scientific terminology, there are 3 types of dawns, right? Or twilights. There's civil twilight, there's nautical twilight, there's astronomical twilight. So these 3 things have no connection. I mean, they're not exactly the same thing as dawn from an Islamic perspective. So dawn from an Islamic perspective, when you start seeing the first thread of light. Civil dawn is when the sun is 6 degrees below the horizon. Nautical dawn is for people who are in the ocean, they're sailing on ships and all that. They came up with 12 degrees where the sun is below the horizon. And twilight, not dawn. Nautical twilight is 12 degrees. And astronomical twilight is where the sun is 18 degrees below the horizon. Okay, so what does that mean? If you forgot a little bit of your math in school, it's okay. What that means is these are degrees, right? So imagine this is what you can see outside. This is the horizon. So the sun, when the sun is going to come, this is sun. The sun is rising and it goes up, right? Sun setting goes down. You can't see the sun anymore. This is what you can see. You can see this. This is underneath the ground. When you're looking outside, this underground. So the sun, when it's coming up, here it's 18 degrees below the horizon. It comes up more, it's 12 degrees. Comes up more, it's 6 degrees. When it comes up to hits the horizon, it's 0 degrees. So the degrees is the angle of where it is below the horizon, right? This is 90-degree angle, 45-degree angle, 18, 12, 6, 0. Okay, so that's the degrees we're talking about. So what do? How do you determine exactly the time when you're supposed to start your fast? Or the other way to say it is, when do you have to stop eating food in the morning? So when you stop eating food in the morning is when the sun is 15 degrees below the horizon. How do you figure that out? So what you're going to do is you're going to open up your app that you use, whichever app you use, Adhan Pro or which was selling Muslims' data to the US government. So I'm not a big fan of them. But you can use Pray Watch or you can use some of these other apps. When you open up your Adhan app, whichever one you're using, you have to go on settings. If you go into the settings, because if you look at all the prayer times, it'll tell you, this is Fajr time, this is sunrise time, this is Zohar time. And if you look at Fajr time, today mine says 5:25. If you open up yours, you might see a different number. You might see 5:05. You see, that's 20-minute difference. What's the actual time? And somebody else opens up theirs and they'll see 5:15. You see, but that's another 10-minute difference. Why are there all these different numbers? So if you go into your settings, and under settings, you click on calculation. And then you look at the method, and you click on method. There are different calculation methods for Fajr prayer or for the time of dawn. And what you're going to see is Muslim World League. It says 18 degrees. And I just told you that 18 degrees is astronomical twilight. And then you look at Islamic Society of North America, and it's 15 degrees. Moon Sighting Committee is 18 degrees. Egyptian General Authority of Survey is 19.5 degrees, which means that this group in Egypt over here, they say that you need to start your fast, compared to ICOI, you need to start your fast like 45 minutes before we're going to start. 40 to 45 minutes. That means you have a lot less time to eat. And then you keep going and you go down to some other ones, there's a bunch of them. The Jabatan Kemajuan Islam, Malaysia. 20 degrees for Fajr. So you're gonna stop eating for like 55 minutes early. You're gonna be waking up at 3:30 a.m. and you have to start your fast that time. So these are all different, calculations that are there. There's even a 12 degrees, somehow Union of Islamic Orgs of France, 12 degrees. They emailed me a few months ago and told me that this is not representative of France anyways. But anyways, so what's the one that I recommend that you use? It's the one that says Islamic Society of North America or North America, where the Fajr degree is 15 degrees. Below, the sun is 15 degrees below the horizon, which gives you a pretty good estimate of the time. Between 12 to 18, it's an average in between 15 degrees. Okay, so that is what is recommended to set your time for that. Because what's going to happen is you go to your local masjid in Irvine and you get one of their calendars and it says you should start fasting at 4:42 a.m. And then you go to Tustin Masjid and you get the calendar and they're like, you should start fasting at 4:22 a.m. And then you go to another masjid in Anaheim and they look and they say, you should start fasting at 4:17 a.m. And you're like, what in the world is going on here? Which one am I supposed to follow? Well, I just gave you my opinion. Which one? What degrees? 15 degrees. Okay. All right. And if you follow the other ones, alhamdulillah. I wrote a whole article about it. It's like 7 pages long. It's on the website, askthescholars.com. If you want to know why this happens and why are there different calendars and all that, you can read through the entire article. And I've noticed that 99% of people who I recommend the article to never make it to the end. So if you're one of those people, mashallah, good for you. All right, next. So you want to wake up and you want to have an early meal. And the early meal is called suhoor. And in the Indian subcontinent, they call it sehri. Right? Same thing. Suhoor is this early morning meal that you wake up and you eat a little bit before you start your fast. So this is highly recommended. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, emphasized that everyone should really try their best to wake up and have this early morning meal. If you don't, is your fast still valid? It is, because it's recommended, it's not required. So your fast is still valid, but highly recommended because it's good for you and it makes your life easier. So you should wake up. Even if you wake up 10 minutes, so let's say your fast starts at 4:27 a.m. So wake up at 4:17, brush your teeth, drink some water. Enough. You can go back to sleep or pray Fajr and then go back to sleep, whatever it is. If you want to have a meal, whatever you want to eat. Even if you have a little bit, it's still good for you. It's very healthy for you to do that. What I don't recommend is you eat some really oily, greasy, like this is not the time usually. This is just my recommendation. Don't eat the samosas that are drowning in oil, maybe air fried, possibly, one or two. Don't drink soda. This is not the time to be drinking soda. This is not the time to be, having stuff that's not going to really give you the energy that you need. If you have a healthy early meal, fasting is easier for you. If you have an unhealthy meal and you have donuts and soda, for this time, you're going to feel the pain in the day. Fasting will be much harder for you. So make it easier for yourself by having a good meal. Number 2, what's recommended is you break your fast immediately. So let's say sunset time comes in, the Maghrib time comes in, it's a correct adhan or your app goes off. You should not wait and say, you know what? I'm not even hungry, man. Today fasting was so easy, I'm just going to do an extra hour. Should you do an extra hour? Say, Allah likes me to do more. No, not in this case. Allah wants you to start when you're supposed to start and finish when you're supposed to finish. So you're not supposed to fast an extra hour, an extra 2 hours, which means if you know you're going to be driving somewhere, take some food with you in the car. So you take some dates, you take some water with you in the car, and as soon as the time comes, if you're stuck on the road, eat and break your fast in the car so that you're breaking on time. Number 3 is that when you break your fast, it is recommended to break your fast by using dates, by eating some dates. So you either eat 1 or 3 or an odd number of dates. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, always recommended an odd number. So even if you eat 1 date or 3 or whatever it is, 5, 7, 9, whatever you want to eat, you break your fast with that. If you don't have any dates, or if you really don't like dates for some reason, what I recommend, first of all, I grew up not liking dates, right, when I was a kid. I recommend that, number 1, try to keep an open mind and say, look, this is what the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to eat. I'm going to try to make myself like this. So try it a little bit. And also realize there's so many different types of dates. They're not all the same. So try and find one that you like. You don't have to use a particular one. Ajwa dates are beautiful. The ones from Medina, this is the Prophet used to eat these. There's sugary dates. They're sweeter. These are dates that I like very much. There's majul dates from California, ironically, from Mecca, California. Funny story, I went to Mecca, several years ago. I was in Mecca and I was about to leave. And I went and I said, I'm leaving back, to America. I want the best dates that you have. I want to take them back with me. And I'm going to, eat. I want something to take back with me. And they said, oh, you want the best dates? I said, I want the best dates you have. He said, oh, yes, I'll give you the best ones. These majul dates, They're from California. These are the absolute best. I said, I'm in Mecca, man. I'm in front of the Kaaba, and I'm trying to buy some dates from you guys, and you're selling me California dates. So alhamdulillah, that didn't work. Obviously, I didn't make that purchase. So try to find the dates that you like, and if you don't eat dates or you don't have them, you can break with water. Second best is to break with water. When you break, you make the dua before you eat, or you could do it right after you take one bite. And this dua is in Arabic. It doesn't have to be said in Arabic, but it's ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله. Once you eat, or right before you eat, you say, now the thirst is gone. The veins are moist, meaning that now that food is coming in me, it's re-energizing me because I've been so thirsty all day. And the reward is affirmed, meaning Allah is going to reward me if Allah wills, inshallah. Right? So this is the most authentic dua to make. And there's another one that you can also make. So there's two possible duas that you ask Allah when you're going to be breaking your fast. Making up fasts. If you miss a fast in Ramadan, you have to make it up unless you're in the excuse category, meaning that you have a permanent illness and you're not likely to recover. When you make up your fast, you have to make it up at your earliest convenience. So what does earliest convenience mean? That's almost like an oxymoron. It's almost contradictory. So it's got to be earliest, but it's convenient to you. So it doesn't mean ASAP. You have to make it up the day after Ramadan is over, because you're not allowed to fast on Eid day anyways. But the day after Eid, you don't have to make it up the next day. But you don't want to be delaying all the way until like right before next Ramadan. Like today, there's still some people who've not made up their fast from last Ramadan. They delayed a lot. It's not generally good practice. You try to make it up at your earliest convenience. Don't delay too much, and you don't have to speed it up too quickly either. But you got to make them up. It's preferable to make up your fast in order. So if you missed 4 fasts, you make them up 4 in a row. Because you missed them in a row, if you miss them in a row, you make them up in a row. But you don't have to. It's recommended, but you don't have to. You could do one, and then next week you do another one. Okay? If you break a fast in the month of Ramadan, according to 2 out of 4 schools, and this is the one that I lean towards, you have broken the special month of Ramadan. You violated the month of Ramadan, which is a serious thing. You need to have a penalty by fasting 60 days in a row after Ramadan, plus making up that day. That's a very strict penalty. Why? It's because Ramadan is a special time. You have basically gone outside and said, everyone's fasting in Ramadan. All the Muslims in the whole world are fasting in Ramadan. And one day you decided, you know what? I just don't want to fast anymore. I'm just hungry. And you're not a kid, and you don't have an excuse, and you're not sick, and you're not traveling, and you just say, no, I just don't want to fast anymore. That attitude is really bad, because Ramadan is a special month, and you have people around you fasting too. So you're the one person who broke it, right? So whether they know it or not, you still did that. So the penalty is to fast for 60 days as what's called kafara. Kafara means penalty, and you have to make up the day as well. So 61 days of makeup. So be very careful if you're gonna say, hey, I just don't feel like fasting anymore. It's too hard for me. If it's hard, it's hard, right? If you don't wake up in the morning and you say, you know what? Oh, I had put my alarm. I didn't wake up. I was supposed to have my suhoor early morning. I was going to drink a whole cup of water, and I was going to eat something to give me energy, and it's going to be so hard. Fasting is hard. Get used to it. But if it's so hard that you become sick and you're lying in your bed and you're in the illness category, then you have a good reason to break your fast. If you're not in the illness category and say, but my throat is so dry, I'm just so thirsty. Is being so thirsty the same as being sick? No, it's not. So learn to differentiate. Learn that they're not the same. It doesn't matter how hungry or how thirsty you are, unless you're sick now because you're so thirsty and so hungry, you will keep that fast. And that's the penalty if you decide not to. Very serious. All right, Taraweeh prayer and i'tikaf. So Ramadan is the only time that there's a special prayer called Taraweeh, where you can pray in the masjid, people gather together, or you can pray at home, but you pray in the masjid, and It's a highly recommended prayer to pray during Ramadan where everybody gathers together. You're either going to pray 8 rak'ahs, 8 units, or 20 units, or you can even just pray 2 or even 4, whatever it may be. You pray and everyone comes together and they try to recite as much of the Quran as they're able to recite. So praying Taraweeh is highly recommended because it's only Ramadan is where you get the chance to do this Taraweeh. So it's a great thing to do if you're able to do it. 8 or 20 units of prayer after praying the Isha prayer. And don't skip the Isha prayer and come only for Taraweeh and then you don't come and pray the Isha. That doesn't make any sense. Because Taraweeh is recommended, Isha is a requirement. You can't be skipping the requirement and then you pray Taraweeh. That doesn't make any sense. Or let's say you pray Taraweeh and then you stay up at night and then you don't wake up for Fajr. What have you done? You did something recommended, but then you were so tired you couldn't do something that's required. That doesn't make sense either. So be careful about that. The last 10 nights of Ramadan, there is a night called Laylatul Qadr, the night of power. And this is the night in which the Quran was sent down, when the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. This night is special. And Allah says that whatever you do on that night of worship, it's like worshipping for 1,000 months. So much extra credit, extra reward. So when is that specific night of Laylatul Qadr? We don't exactly know. Why do we don't exactly know? It's somewhere in the last 10 nights and more likely to be the last 10 odd nights of the month of Ramadan. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, told us that he doesn't know, he didn't remember, and this was by Allah. Everyone had forgotten exactly what night of Ramadan it was when the Quran was revealed. So only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this knowledge. Why did he leave it like this, where it's kind of you have to guess which night it is, so that you put in more effort? Because every night of Ramadan is special. You get extra reward anyways for doing all of these things. So he wanted us to put in extra time during the last 10 nights, do a little extra during the last 10 odd nights. And some people, they assume, they say, well, we think it's the 27th, or we think it's the 29th, or we think it's the 23rd. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, never said any of those dates. So we don't know for sure. What we do know, it's in the last 10 nights, more likely in the last 10 odd nights of Ramadan. When does the night start? So the last 10 doesn't always mean 10, because Ramadan can be 29 days. So it can also mean the last 9, meaning the last part of Ramadan, starting on the 21st of Ramadan. Now, something about the Islamic calendar, right? So we talked about the American calendar has 365 days, and the lunar calendar has 354 days. So the American day starts. When does the next day start? What time does it start? 12 p.m., midnight, right? It's the new day starts and the date changes. When does the date change in the Islamic calendar? At Maghrib time. So at sunset, as soon as the sun goes down, the date has actually switched and now you're in the next day. Technically, you're at night, but it's the next day. So on the 20th day of Ramadan, when the sun sets, now it's the 21st night of Ramadan, and that's when the last 10 nights actually begin. So if you look at your calendar, right, and you're looking like, well, when is the last 10 nights of Ramadan going to start? And you're looking like, well, today's the 20th of Ramadan, so it's not today. Well, actually, it is after sunset. When sunset comes, the date switches and then it starts. Okay? Next, there's something called seclusion in the masjid, or i'tikaf. I'tikaf is a practice of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He used to go and he would, in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, starting at the 21st at Maghrib time, he would go into the masjid and he would get a tent and he would camp out in the masjid for 10 days. And he would not leave. And that is something that is recommended for all Muslims to do if they're able to do so in the month of Ramadan, last 10 nights. With or without a tent. Right? You could bring a sleeping bag or whatever it is. You're not supposed to leave the masjid unless you have a good excuse. What's a good excuse? Masjid means the prayer area. The prayer area here, the multi-purpose room prayer area, any other prayer area that's designated for people to pray. You're allowed to go to the bathroom even though it's outside the prayer area of the masjid. If nobody can bring you food because you need to eat and your DoorDash, Uber Eats app is not working for some reason, you can drive, grab some food, quickly come right back, you eat your food inside the masjid. If you need to go home very quickly to grab something because you forgot your sleeping bag, nobody else can deliver it to you. Go home, grab your sleeping bag, jump in the car, come right back to the masjid. You have a good reason to leave for a short period of time. You need to take a shower, and even though we do have showers, I think over here, I haven't tested them, and you're like, but this shower just doesn't do the job for whatever reason. I need to go home, quickly super shower, and get right back in and come right back to the masjid. You're allowed to do that. That's not going to break your etikaf. But if you're like, oh, my friends are inviting me, let's just have a quick cup of coffee, man. And you go out, okay, let me just have coffee with you guys in the cafe. No, your etikaf is broken. So you have to be in the masjid for all 10 days straight, and you don't leave without a good reason. Fitra, or zakatul fitr, or sadaqatul fitr. This is a charity that every Muslim should pay at the end of the month of Ramadan before the Eid prayer. So what do we do? A man is responsible for paying for his children that are young children. Once they reach the age of maturity, it's their own responsibility. What about a woman if she has her own money? Does she have to pay for herself or her husband pays for her? Very generous, mashallah. But no, woman's responsibility is, see, the man is responsible for paying for his young children. The wife is responsible for paying on her own. The adult children are not little kids anymore. They're responsible for paying on their own. Now the question is, if he's really nice and just gives the money to them, that's fine. There should be no expectation or no pressure. Everyone is supposed to be paying on their own between you and Allah, because the children are children. So you pay on behalf of your children, but not necessarily on behalf of other people. Distribution. This money must be given to people who are needy. And it's going to be $15 per person. And it's better to pay early so the money can be given to people. And what is this money for? This is money so that people who are in need, people who are poor, they can buy stuff and they can enjoy the day of Eid. Now, if you think about how sad it is, some people, they don't have enough, and they're even the day of Eid. The day of Eid is supposed to be a day where you celebrate and you enjoy. Some people don't have enough money to even enjoy one day of Eid because they're thinking about how am I going to get food and how am I going to get enough money to survive this day. So this payment of $15 per person is supposed to get into the hands of people who are in need so that they don't need to worry about that specific day and they can enjoy the day of Eid. Maybe they could buy some new clothes for themselves, or they could buy some extra food or whatever it is, so they can also benefit from that day. Eid al-Fitr. This is the day of Eid after Ramadan ends. It's known as the festival of breaking the fast. It's the day after Ramadan. So if Ramadan is 29 days, the next day is the month of Shawwal, and that's Eid. If Ramadan is 30 days, then the next day is Shawwal, and that is going to be the day of Eid. You are not allowed to fast on the day of Eid, by the way. It's haram to fast on the day of Eid. Your job is to enjoy and party and celebrate. The communities and masjids should come together and they should pray in one big area. This is what's recommended. Unfortunately, and I'll say this publicly, unfortunately, the masjids in this area don't get together, unfortunately, and join together so much. Sometimes they do, oftentimes they don't. It would be nicer if they did somehow get together and did one big Eid prayer celebration, but it doesn't happen. But at least the masjid comes together and there's going to be a celebration in each masjid. The prayer is an Eid prayer, and it's going to be a 2-unit, 2 rak'ah prayer. And this is something that's everyone should try to make it to. And this is the day of Eid and the prayer of Eid. Now let's talk a little bit about zakah. And we have extended Q&A later on in the day. So zakah. Zakah is a pillar of Islam. It's an obligation. If you have 3 ounces of gold or more, this is an old calculation, it's about $6,000. You check the value of the spot price of gold, and you check what an ounce is, multiply by 3. If you have this much money or more, you have to be paying zakah. If you had this much money for more than a year, you have to be paying zakah. And zakah is to be paid every single year. So how does it work? Let me give you an example. You're going to pay 2.5% on all of your productive assets of wealth that you have, your asset classes. So let me give you an example. You have furniture in your house. You've got a sofa, you've got a dining table, you have a bookshelf, you have beds, right? And you have drawers. Let's say if you could sell all of this, it has a value of $2,000. Is this a productive asset? Meaning, is this your personal property that you're using, or can this be used for business because you can sell this and make more money off of it, and then you could have money and do something else with it? Islamically, this is considered to be personal use. It's stuck for personal use. What's going to happen if you say, I want to make some money off my bed? Let me go make some money, sell my bed. What are you going to do with that cash? You need a bed to sleep on generally, right? So you have the bed for a reason. You're using it. That bed, is the bed going up in value? Generally, no. I don't know how you sleep or whatever, but it's not going up in value. This is considered personal wealth. You do not pay zakah on it. So even though you say, all my furniture, it's worth $2,000. That's quite a bit of money. I'm not going to count that at all. You do not need to pay zakah on your furniture. Your personal vehicles. You say, I own a car. And that car right now, if I sold it, it's worth $24,000. Way more than the value of zakah. But I drive that every day. I need that for my personal, that's my personal vehicle. Do I count it as zakah or no? No. You do not need to pay zakah on your personal vehicles, right? Let's say you have electronics. I have a laptop, and I have a phone, and I have a computer at home, and I have a television, and I have all these things, and they're worth $5,500. But I use them for my personal use. I don't sell computers as my business. I'm not in the business of selling phones. This is for my personal use. Personal property, do we pay zakah on it? No. Doesn't matter what the value is, we do not pay zakah on it. I have cash in my home, and I have some in my pocket, and I keep some hidden in my car. I'm not going to tell you where, but I have some hidden. Actually, I know. But I have some in my car hidden, and I calculate all of that. Under my pillowcase, I have like extra money, and in my drawer, I have this extra emergency money. I add it all up, it's $1,000. Do I have to pay zakah on that money? Yes. Why? Because it's a productive asset. What does that mean Islamically? It means that, see that money that's sitting there? I could have taken that money and I could have used it to make more money. I could have used the $1,000 and say, you know what? I'm going to buy 5 used phones from somebody, and I'm going to try and sell them for $300 a piece. So what's my profit per phone? Anyone's really good at math? They were paying attention? Per phone. How much? $100 per phone. Good. So some people got it. Right? So I'm making $500 total profit, $100 per phone. I could have done that. And Allah wants us to do that. He doesn't want us to have cash sitting around doing nothing. He wants us to use our cash, but keep a little bit maybe saved just in case. This is a productive asset. So cash is productive because you could use it to make more money if you wanted to. And therefore, you have to pay zakah on it, 2.5%. So I'm going to calculate $1,000 I'm going to have to pay zakah on so far. Next, I have a checking account, bank account, and there's $2,000 in there. It's the same as cash. It's money. It's my money. I can pull it out when I want. It's a productive asset. I have to calculate that. So how much money do I have so far that I have to pay zakah on? 3,000 so far. All right. I have 100 shares of Tesla in E-Trade in my stock portfolio, and it's worth $3,000. Is it a productive asset? Yes. Can I sell that? I can sell it. Right? And it's actually going up and down, and the price changes every single day of the stock. So I have to pay zakah on that. So how much money do I have so far? $6,000. All right. I have 100 shares of Amana X in my Roth IRA accounts, which I'm saving for retirement, and it's valued at $2,000. Amana is the halal mutual fund. Is it a productive asset? It's a productive asset. Do I need to pay zakah on it? Yes. How much money do we have now? $8,000. All right. I have cryptocurrency in my Bitcoin wallet valued at $2,000. Is it a productive asset? It's a productive asset. It's like cash. It's currency. Now how much money do I have? $10,000. How much money in zakat do I need to pay if I've had more than $6,000 for a year now? How much money do you have to pay in zakat? $250. 2.5% of $10,000. This is how you calculate your zakat. Okay? And then let's take one more scenario. You're allowed to deduct loans that are due right now. So if you have you have a debt and you took out money, you borrowed money from somebody, and it's due right now, and the person's saying, "I'm waiting for my money back." Remember, I loaned you $1,000. I want my money back right now. If that money is due right now, you can deduct that. So, for example, you have a credit card bill, and you used your credit card, and you owe the credit card company $3,000, and they're waiting for you to pay that because you've been using it for groceries and everything. You can deduct that. If you have a friend that gave you some money and you need to pay him back, and you're going to pay him back, like you're going to pay him back in a few days, you can deduct that amount right now. But if you're not going to pay him back and he goes, "No, man, don't worry about it. You can pay me after a year," and you go, "Oh, I'm not even going to pay him until a year later," you do not deduct that. If you have a loan on your car, or if you have a lease payment on your car, or you have a loan on your house, and you're making monthly payments, are they asking you to pay the entire amount right now back? No, they're not. They're only expecting a monthly payment. If you made the monthly payment last week, do you deduct the monthly payment that's coming up? No, because they're not expecting it right now. It's not due right now. What is due? The monthly payment is due on the due date of the monthly payment. You don't say, "Well, you know what? I have an $800,000 loan on my house, and I'm so poor, I only have $120,000 in my bank account. Therefore, I'm in debt. I'm minus $600,000 in debt. People should give me zakah because I'm in the negative, and that other guy, he has $4,000 in his bank account. He's not poor. I'm the real poor person." And then you drive away in your Mercedes with the zakat that people gave to you. No. You only subtract loans that are due now, and if they're monthly installments, you only subtract the monthly installments that is due right now. Otherwise, you don't. Let's take a look at an example. You have $10,000 in the bank. It's been a year. You're pretty well off. You have $10,000, so you're supposed to pay zakat. Productive money, yes, you got to pay zakat on it. You have car finance. You pay $200 a month for 16 months. Something you have to pay. You have, let's say, a halal home mortgage, $2,200 a month. You could tell this was done a long time ago. All right, $2,200 a month you have to pay for 150 months. All right, you have a halal student loan, $200 a month you're paying, standard 10-year repayment plan on your student loan. You have a credit card balance that's due right now. Are you going to subtract the first three? Car finance payment? No. Home mortgage? No. Student loan? No. Credit card? It's due right now? Yes. You will deduct that. You will not deduct the other stuff unless it's due. And then you figure out what your zakah is. Okay? I think this is the last part. All right. Only some people can receive zakah. So this is how you pay zakah. Who can receive your zakah? Zakah can only be given to people who fall into the following categories. People who are poor, people who are in debt, and their debt is due right now, not long-term debt. A traveler that is stranded and stuck in a place and they don't have access to their money, etc., etc. There's 7 categories of people that you can give zakat to. In 2019, now you know when the presentation was made, the U.S. poverty rate was, for a single person, $12,490 for a single person per year, and for a family of 4, $25,750. This is the approximate definition of a person who is in a state of poverty in 2019, according to the United States standards. So you can find somebody who falls into that category and give the zakat directly to them. Or you can let a responsible organization do the work for you and give it to them and have them distribute for you on your behalf. So alhamdulillah, at ICOI we have an awesome program called the Community Assistance Program, CAP, where you can actually give your zakat money to them, and they will find the people who are in need and they will distribute that money on your behalf. You want to make sure that when you pick an organization, you pick a good one, you pick a reliable one, and you want to pick a Muslim one. Because Muslims are paying zakah. Zakah can only be distributed to Muslims, back to Muslims, and you want to make sure that it's Muslims that are in charge of distributing your zakah. Like, for example, the UNHCR now is trying to collect zakah. These are majority non-Muslims who are operating these funds. The United Nations may not be the best organization to be distributing Muslim zakah for them. But anyways, that's open to discussion. You cannot give zakah to a non-Muslim, number one. So if you see somebody, poor person on the street, and let's assume you know that they're poor. Can you give them your zakah? No, because zakah is paid by Muslims, given to Muslims. Now, can you give sadaqah, general charity, to a non-Muslim? Of course you can, and you should. But zakah is specific category that only goes to Muslims, number one. Number two, it cannot benefit the one who's giving the zakah. You cannot give zakah back to yourself. So you're like, you have all this money, and then you're like, you know what? I need to give zakah to somebody who's in need. I'm in need. Just give it back to myself. You cannot do that. And how do some people do that? There's different ways of doing that. So for example, you give it to your children. I say, you know what, Yusuf, would you like a new computer? I have some zakat to distribute. You say, Yusuf seems like he's pretty poor. Let me go and give him money so he can buy himself a computer. But I cannot do that because he's my son and I'm financially responsible for him. So you cannot give zakat to somebody who you are financially responsible for taking care of. Therefore, you cannot give zakat to your parents because children are responsible for financially taking care of their parents if they're not able to take care of themselves. So you're not allowed to give to parents or children. Can you give to your brother if he's poor? Yes. Can you give to your sister, to your uncle, to your cousin? Yes. Because you are not obligated to spend on them. And in fact, zakah should be given to your family members first, but not to your children or parents. Other family members besides them. So you cannot give zakah to get benefit back to yourself by giving to these two. Otherwise, to other family members is fine. You cannot give zakah to get it back to yourself. So if you go to a charity organization and they say, let's say there's 3 tables. I'm not going to mention any name. 3 charitable organizations say, give it to us and we will distribute it for you. And one of them says, you know what? If you give it to us instead of them, we'll give you this awesome, cool gift wrap basket with like goodies and a mug and all sorts of cool stuff and a USB stick and everything like that. I don't know, people don't even use USB anymore. But like, here's some cool stuff. If you gave your zakat to them and you took the gift basket, part of that gift basket was paid by your charity money. You cannot accept that gift basket because you're giving it back to yourself. If you give zakat to the masjid for operating expenses here, and then guess what? The air conditioning is on. And then you're sitting here and you're benefiting from the air conditioning. And the masjid goes, you know what? We need new carpet. And they get a brand new carpet. Who benefited from that? You just benefited from your own zakah money. And you say, this is cool. I love this carpet. I'm so glad all of us paid our zakat to the masjid so we got new carpet. You just gave the zakat back to yourself. So you cannot give zakah to something which is going to come back and benefit you in any way, shape, or form. And you cannot give zakah to a non-person. You're supposed to give zakah to people who are poor, people who are in debt, a traveler that is stranded. You do not give zakat to a masjid either because a masjid is not a person. See, this masjid seems to be really poor. It's living below the poverty line. It's not a person. So you have to give zakat to people. This is according to one of the very strong scholarly views. You cannot give zakat to build a bridge. See, we need a bridge between these 2 areas. So I'm going to give my zakat to build a bridge. A bridge is not a poor person. If you somehow give zakat to poor people and all of them gather their money together and say, we need to build this bridge, they can build the bridge. But you gave it to the people who are poor. You cannot give zakat to a hospital to build a hospital. But can you give zakah to people as a fund? When poor people come to the hospital, they say, you know what? We're going to use a special zakah fund. We're going to give you the money so that you can pay for your medical needs, but not for the building itself of the entire hospital. So this is a very strong opinion among many scholars that you don't give it to a non-person. You give it to people who are in need. Okay? And you cannot, it's funny, you cannot give zakat to somebody who's lazy. It's written in the books of Islamic law. Somebody's lazy and they don't want to work, or somebody's fraudulent and they're pretending to be poor or something like that, you cannot give zakat to them. You should not give zakat to them. And you cannot give zakat to pay for your taxes. Or you cannot say, I already pay my taxes and therefore I don't need to pay zakat. I've heard this argument, and it's a very weak argument, and I will answer it during Q&A if you want more details, inshallah. So that would normally be the time where we stop for questions, but it's actually Zuhr time. So we need to call the adhan, and what we're going to do is after Zuhr, we have a 30-minute break, we have a lunch break, we have food too. So we actually have food here. So we're going to pray Zuhr, everyone can make wudu, eat your lunch, 2 o'clock, we come back. Sheikh Haifa is going to give a talk about the inner dimensions and the inner benefit of fasting in Ramadan. And then we're going to have about a good 45 minutes or so of Q&A, and you can ask all of your questions during that time, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. And we need to have people start moving out so we can clear the area for prayer, inshallah. Salam.